Hello, welcome to the SAIEE President's Inaugural Lecture 2021. My name is Sunil Maharaj. I'm from the University of Pretoria, and I'm very glad to be the President for the SAIEE for the 2021-2022 financial year. My presentation today on my inaugural address is the future of work. So before I start, I'd like to thank and acknowledge the various people that assisted me in putting this presentation together. People from the Faculty of Engineering, Built Environment and IT, and of course the colleagues at the SAIEE administrative staff. So my presentation will basically start with a brief introduction, something on the future of work, the primary skills for the future of work, automation and its impact on employment, 4IR, a South African perspective, and maybe beyond 4IR, a global perspective, and of course, technologies that matter the most for organizations, and we as the SAIEE and the road ahead, and maybe some concluding remarks going forward. So let's start by this address talking about the future of work. It's impossible in this presentation to exhaust all the avenues for the future of work, because the future of work has three key pillars. It's about the work itself, how that changes, the worker, the skills, the knowledge, and the type of worker we're going to have in the future, and of course the workplaces. So all three are changing and it's impossible to do justice. But however, I'll touch a little bit on the nature of the work and something about the worker. So digitalization and automation have triggered essential alterations in how we live, work, socialize, and study. And the transitions of technology saw the conception of robotics, AI, drones, Internet of Things, VR and extended reality and virtual reality that are taking over the workforce at a rapid pace. And these things, I think, to some extent, we're fairly familiar with. The future of work, I must stress, is human-led. Technology is the catalyst of change in the workplace, but humans are the sustaining force behind the machines, and that's very important. The importance of the human touch is still required in this technology-driven world. Skills like leadership, deliberation and debate, conflict resolution, and very important ethical considerations for decision-making is needed to make it work in a holistic fashion. And of course, organizations and leaders should keep this in mind and the expectations they need in these various skills to making instant decisions and to make decisions that impact society at large. And of course, we need to thrive in this environment and of course use technology to the best of our ability to make it work for us. So as the COVID-19 pandemic drives profound societal and organizational shifts, leaders have the opportunity to return to work by designing the future of work, building on the lessons and practices their organizations executed during the crisis. Of course, the rest of the world has watched in disbelief as the COVID-19 pandemic took hold at the beginning of 2020 and changed life as we knew it. In March, more than 2/3 of humanity was in lockdown, and by end of April, almost 1.6 billion workers stood in immediate danger of having their livelihoods destroyed. COVID has reinforced our conviction that human concerns are not separate from technological advances, but importantly for organizations to capture the full value of the technologies they have put in place. Of course, this crisis presents a unique opportunity for organizations, for us like the SAIEE, to overcome the instinct of treating humans and machines on parallel paths, to instead build connections that can pave a path forward. Of course, COVID-19 has challenged us as business leaders to do the things we have done, and of course how we stage the return for work, understand things, the advancements we have, and of course how we deal with crisis and channel the new path forward to make businesses sustainable and on the path of growth. So these are some of the 10 primary skills for the future of work that has been in the literature. Of course, creativity is an important part. Creativity has been there, but of course we need to always build and sustain creativity in the work environment. emotional intelligence becoming more and more important as we embrace diversity and multicultural and working environments. Analytical, critical thinking that's very strong in engineering design, which we have done in the past and do in the future. Active learning with growth mindset, judgment and decision making, interpersonal communication skills, leadership skills, diversity and cultural intelligence, technology skills, and of course, very importantly, embracing change. So this video basically that I'm presenting going forward is giving you a small snapshot of basically the future of work given the COVID-19 challenges and given the COVID-19 environment and how it impacts work as displayed by the World Economic Forum.
COVID-19 is one of the biggest crises of our time. It has impacted every single one of us, shaken our social systems, and disrupted every sector of our economies. The automation of work, combined with the global recession, led workers to lose their jobs at an accelerated pace compared to previous years. And this trend is expected to continue. The ongoing shift in the division of labor between humans, machines, and algorithms might displace 85 million jobs worldwide in the next 5 years, while 97 million new roles, ones that are more adapted to this new task distribution, may emerge. By 2025, companies expect to displace roughly 6% of their total workforce. 1 in 2 workers will need reskilling, and those remaining in their current roles will need to update 40% of their skill set to adapt to the changing labor market. There is a way to collectively benefit from these challenging times. Decades of research have shown that the most valuable asset of any economy or company is its human capital. Around the globe, companies are already experiencing a shortage in relevant skills for future roles and are investing in reskilling and upskilling their workforce. By 2025, organizations say they will train over 70% of their employees to ensure they can smoothly transition into the jobs of tomorrow. These include DevOps engineers, artificial intelligence specialists, digital marketing managers, talent acquisition specialists, and customer success specialists. It will take on average between 2 weeks and 5 months for workers to pick up new skills, allowing them to move into these new roles. But data shows they won't need to have the perfect skill set to start transitioning. While 2/3 of employers expect to get a return on investment in employees' reskilling programs within just 1 year, governments will also need to step in to update and fund education and training systems and to ensure displaced workers have adequate safety nets. With purposeful leadership and collaboration, we can turn this global crisis into a unique opportunity to transition into a future of jobs that is inclusive, fair, and sustainable.
So let's talk about automation and its impact on employment. So everything has its advantages and disadvantages. Certainly the advantages in automation is about more efficient production, higher labor productivity, and higher wages and profit end of the day. Cheaper goods increases disposable income of customers. It avoids boring, repetitive jobs and can enable a shorter working week, as we've seen in Europe. In some countries have already implemented this. Can improve safety and remove risk of human error, and of course can give consumers greater choice of goods. Whereas some of the cons or disadvantages is some workers can become displaced, possible structural unemployment, creates winners and losers, possible increase of inequality. Automation could increase monopoly power, and of course the loss of human interaction, sometimes dealing with basically computers, can lead to lower quality of life. And of course, automated systems can show lack of empathy sometimes in certain events. But of course, in the future, we need to understand how to have automation, robotics, for example, in automation and human beings working together. And imagine your colleague in your office space will be a robot and how you deal and work with a robot. So this is a slide basically showing you some of the most prepared countries for automation. This is a study done basically to show countries that are most prepared for the imminent automation. And of course, beyond automation, looking at things like the innovation environment, education, and labor market policies. And in this particular study, 25 countries were assessed. And you can see South Africa in this is basically sitting number 22 in this particular list. So we don't do very well in terms of automation and preparedness for the future world of work and, of course, the innovation environment. So this shows us that we need to kind of leapfrog and reposition ourselves to become more competitive in the future world of work. So this basically shows us some of the future world of work I mentioned about intercultural, cross-disciplinary. And this is a snapshot view, not exhaustive by any means, to show some of the top cross-cutting, specialized skills of the future. For example, if we take on the left-hand side, it shows the different specialized skills. And on the right-hand side, it shows some of the emerging job clusters. For example, let's take product marketing. We talk about data and AI, people and culture, marketing, product development, and sales. These 5 basically different types of clusters or types of work are required to kind of add value to product marketing. For example, let's look at digital marketing. Content is important, and we had content developers in the past. But now data and AI becomes an important part of digital marketing. And of course, things like product development and sales becomes also important parts. And let's take another one, for example, computer networking, number 9. Basically, we talk about cloud computing, data and AI, and engineering, and sales now becomes an important part of computer networking. And likewise, we can go for an example like data science. We know traditional data science, we may think of work of computer engineers and basically computer scientists, but not quite. Now it involves data science and data and AI, but also marketing. Marketing in terms of how you market data science and how you package it for the people out there to understand it. And of course, product development that encompasses the data science and so forth. You can basically go through those things there. So taking South Africa, for example, over the past decade, we know South Africa has experienced a significant decline in economic growth and increase in unemployment. The latest statistics from Stats SA showed us that unemployment has increased, and we really need to address this. So we can see basically our GDP growth rate, our GDP has dropped. Our unemployment is pretty static or kind of increasing to a very high and scary number, and we need to address this. And some of the fears is that typically people understand that when we move from one industrial revolution to another, people always were afraid of losing jobs. But if you look at historically and statistically, always more and more jobs were created. Yes, we did lose jobs, but different types of jobs were created. And we can see the employment of total workforce in the globe, if you look at basically from the first IR to now, has increased significantly. So hence, there is great opportunity for us going forward. So how do we address these kind of things going into the future? Our action is needed by all stakeholders. And these I view as the 3 pillars that we need to have working together. Some may call the tripartite alliance. That is government, business, and the individuals. Government, where we need to embrace digitization. We need to invest in human capital. We need to mitigate job impact of automation and foster a step up in job creation. Whereas business needs to rethink strategy, it needs to upgrade its workforce, planning and reskilling, and embrace new ways of working. And of course, individuals, that is the workforce, needs to focus on skills, not just getting a qualification or certification. And we need to embrace lifelong learning. We need to target high growth sectors and roles and find opportunities for entrepreneurship and needs to create jobs for the future. With this video, basically it presents jobs of the future. And this is a video presented by the World Economic Forum last year in 2020, and basically talks about how the transition is happening in terms of digitization and the change of the nature of work going forward.
If you're watching this, you're among the 3% of people that understand that the future of work is going to look very different from what it is now. So keep watching. Let's see where we're heading. It's also exciting, right? Siri will recognize your voice even if you're 5 meters away from your phone. That new chatbot feels totally real. Self-driving cars are no longer fiction. You can analyze your DNA. You tried flying that drone for the first time, and you're thinking of buying a smart speaker to make your life so much easier. A few years from now, and that's something like 3 years, not 30, artificial intelligence, robotics, machine learning, mass 3D printing, biotechnology, chatbots, virtual reality, deep learning, drones, augmented reality, smart objects will all be deeply enrooted in our everyday lives. Just like computers, phones, or electricity are for us today. Oh well, is this really gonna happen? And if it does, you'll adapt when the time comes, right? Life is good. You love your job. You've been working for this established company for a few years. You're comfortable in your position. You know what you're good at. People like you, and that last presentation you gave got you some amazing reactions. You're safe with your company. In the meantime, you see an article or two speculating on the future of jobs. McKinsey published a report stating that 45% of all current tasks could be automated with present technology. The World Economic Forum estimates that 33% of jobs in 2020 don't even exist yet. But what do they know, right? You've got time. Oh look, the supermarket just introduced self-cashier machine. You're at the airport checking in luggage. What the heck happened to all the real people at the check-in desk? Gone. Replaced by machines. But it's only the low-skilled jobs, right? Nope. Think again. In 2012, there were 150,000 humans working on Wall Street. 3 years later, automation has cut that number down to 100,000. That's 1/3 gone. But it's only the mathematical and scientific jobs, right? Nope. Think again. This Japanese insurance company, Fukoku Mutual Life Insurance, is already replacing all its human insurance claim workers with an AI system that will handle customers more efficiently. See these articles? They're written by algorithms, and we can't tell the difference with human written content. And thinking of converting yourself to being an online poker player? Too late. There's an AI that can already beat humans at it. Most journalists, tax consultants, marketeers, technicians, knowledge workers, lawyers, even the person editing this video right now will to some extent have been impacted or automated by technology in a couple of years. And what have you been doing? Probably watching Netflix. And the problem is, the machines don't wait. And the machines, they don't watch Netflix. So what are the forces at play here? Basically, there's 10 million developers out there using increasingly simple and cheap technology to build new products and services. Some as young as 12 are already coding the future. Even that safe company you work for is increasingly under outside threat. And it's not just the Google, Amazon, Facebooks, and Apples of the world that I'm talking about. There are now tens of thousands of startups out there eating away at all sorts of jobs. Now, are they creating many jobs in the process? Let's look at some stats. Travel a bunch of years back to when Kodak ruled the world of photography. They were worth 38 billion and employed 140,000 people. That's approximately $270,000 per employee.
Our people work with pride to make Kodak a creative and innovative company.
Fast forward to recent times, YouTube sold for 1.65 billion with a mere 65 employees. That's $25 million per employee. Instagram, which had 13 employees and was sold for $1 billion. That's $77 million per employee. WhatsApp sold for 19 billion with 55 employees. That's a staggering 345 million per employee. So how is this all possible? Technology has allowed the emergence of what we call exponential organizations. These are exponentially fast-growing companies that leverage technology and require less employees, hire less people, but grow exponentially through technology. As this happens, job roles are slowly disappearing and being replaced by skill sets. Employers require you to know an ever-growing number of new and ever-changing fundamental skills in order to use the technologies they've implemented.
But the take-home at the video on the end is the key thing about showing that we always need to know the fundamentals. The fundamentals are a must, and everything is built on the fundamentals, and which we teach in engineering and science and technology. Hence, the fundamentals will always build the building blocks for any future of work and any future industrial revolution. Technologies that matter most for business today are basically, as we're very familiar with, things like AI, augmented reality, blockchain, drones, Internet of Things, robotics, VR, AR, and extended reality, and of course, 3D printing. These kind of technologies we're fairly familiar with, we know about them, and of course, they're going to impact us going forward. So, going forward, based on research, what are the planned business adaptations in response to COVID-19? And of course, going forward in terms of the future of work. So this is based on the survey done to different employers. So one would find, for example, 84% of the employees feel that they need to accelerate digitization of the work processes. That means using digital tools, video conferencing, improving data throughputs and data rates, and so forth. And of course, 83% found that it's important to provide opportunities to work remotely, as we're all experiencing this, and that's becoming more and more pertinent and important. And one can go through the different things. And one of the key things I would like to bring to attention is people in industry have found temporarily increased workforce is only 5%. That means people are not going to increase their workforce. And of course, permanently increased workforce is even lesser, 1%. So what it says that certainly industries may not increase their workforce, but learn to use their current employees much more optimally, and of course, have smaller industries supporting them, as we see many large corporates are buying services from smaller companies, and that gives rise to what we call the gig economy, which I'll talk about a bit later. So beyond 4IR, what's the global perspective? So I think we know technology is changing the force of work at an alarming rate, and organizations have a huge responsibility to keep up and to keep compliant and keep on moving, to keep innovating and keep reinventing themselves so that they still become relevant in the future world of corporate business. Many organizations are expected to make changes to their locations, their value chains, the size of the workforce due to technology integration. And it is perceived that by 2025, the time spent on current tasks at work by humans and machines will be around the same amount. And of course, this, one may argue, may be true for some countries, but certainly maybe for developing countries, it may change. But I think the key take home here is certainly humans and machines will be working together. We can see that to some extent in the automotive industry in South Africa, but certainly I think it will become more and more pervasive. So according to the World Economic Forum Report 2020, employees expect by around 2025, redundant roles would decline from 15% to 9%. That means people become much more efficient and productive out in the workplace. Emerging professions will grow from 7.8 to 13.5%. So certainly we need to position ourselves as a country, as an institute, on how we provide skills for people to take their rightful place in this emerging professions. And based on these figures, it is estimated that certainly there will be jobs displacement, as I mentioned, but certainly there'll be more jobs created, but new types of jobs with new different skill sets. So something on the South African perspective. So recent studies in South Africa raised important questions like, how can South Africa embrace the 4IR to rekindle economic growth and transformations, revitalize skills and create high quality jobs in large numbers, so we don't become a consuming country, but rather a country that produces new technology and new innovation for the global world. So the other important aspect is, how can the country mitigate the risk that the 4IR will lead to job losses, given that unemployment, as I mentioned earlier, stands at quite a staggering high level of 30%. So these are the questions on the mind of leaders from across the public and private sector, labor and education sectors. Although the impact of the advancement of technology is disruptive, they represent numerous opportunities to rekindle throughput, income, and physical growth in South Africa. And as I mentioned, if we look from the first IR to the third IR, there has been growth, there has been more jobs created, but we need to position ourselves to take advantage of that particular space. They have the probability to create millions of high-quality jobs, as I mentioned, improve operational efficiency and help deliver better outcomes for business and the public, and address unemployment, poverty and inequality, these triple evils that we see in South Africa. So let's look at the future of work in South Africa: digitization, productivity, and job creation. So this slide basically shows us the opportunity digitization and the future of work creates in the South African space. And how do we embrace it is very important, so that we take advantage of this and benefit the economy and benefit people having more jobs in this country. So we look at productivity and growth. Certainly there's an opportunity for increase in that space. The real GDP growth, there's a potential to increase that. And in South Africa, projections have shown that it can result in the net gain of more than 1 million jobs by 2030. So this is an opportunity we need to take and see how we do it. This is saying what can be done. Now we need to know how it can be done, so that we change the space in the South African society. And of course, very importantly, where 52% of South African population are women, how new opportunities can exist for women. Digitization, it's said, can create 1.6 million jobs for women and boost employment. And this is a significant change that we need to see in our society going forward, especially in the high-tech skills environment. And of course, the new demand for graduates. So tech has enabled jobs, will require higher skills, resulting in the demand for an additional 1.7 million graduates, but in the right skills with the right knowledge capabilities. And that's very important for us to embrace. And of course, I mentioned earlier on about the 3 pillars from government, from business, and individuals. And I think these are important, that we need to work in synergy and symbiotically so that we can achieve what we hope to dream of. So this is basically showing a snapshot of some of the technologies likely to be adopted by 2025, and of course, how these technologies impact different businesses differently or different sectors differently. So you can look at this at leisure, but however, let's take one example, for example, agriculture, food and beverage, where it shows the big impact will be e-commerce and digital trade, for example, IoT and the connected devices, which I'll show something we are doing at University of Pretoria as an example to show how these impact basically agriculture and food and the economy going down the line. Let's take, for example, digital communication and ICT, which is very close to, for example, the SAIEE. Encryption, cybersecurity is an important aspect. E-commerce and digital trade are important part. Big data analytics, very, very important part in impacting that business, and so forth. So these shows you basically how, when I mentioned earlier on about the clusters, how it's important to develop these clusters of knowledge base and skills that people can work together. So what are some of the future of jobs? And obviously, this is not exhaustive by any means. This is a snapshot of some of the job roles of the future. For example, Internet of Things specialists, IoT specialists, and that could be for different kinds of environment, whether for an IoT specialist, maybe in the healthcare space, or maybe in the agriculture space, or maybe in a warehouse kind of environment. They'd be kind of different. App developers for different kind of environments. Cloud computing managers with respect to different professions, for example, in the biotech space, the transport space, the transport science environment. These are different kind of job requirements, having a cloud computing manager, but in a different kind of environment. Cybersecurity, for example, a manager for cybersecurity. And we know cybersecurity is becoming more and more important in different organizations across the globe. Doesn't matter even if you're a developing economy. These are becoming very, very important. AI specialists, data analysts. Take a medical practitioner, data scientist. The job has changed radically. For example, a medical practitioner may, for example, use scans and do work, for example, let's say in oncology. But now, how do you have this data, this large amounts of data, and how do you interpret the data to make diagnosis or to predict certain kind of treatments or see how kind of treatments work? And so the nature of the work that will apply for oncology, for example, or maybe in the cardiologist kind of environment are different. So we need to have people specialists in those areas. And of course, a robotic surgeon specialist. Yes, we all know we're using robots now in surgery, but certainly, how does a person support a robot for a particular type of specialization? For example, a robot used, for example, in cardiology, and a robot may be used, for example, in kidney work is different. So hence, we need people to specialize in those kind of environments. And of course, VR and extended reality automation designers for different kind of environments, whether it's a mining environment or whether it's a training environment or maybe looking at agriculture, are different. So you need some of the skills, but how do you translate those skills for that particular kind of work? And of course, this is some of the ideas, and it's as good as your imagination, and we all are creative people, and we all imagine different kind of jobs we need for our own kind of industry going forward. And hence, the SAIEE can play an important role in developing the right kind of training and opportunities for this, for the different kinds of industries that we have in the country. So this is an example I mentioned about how we can have skills working, and this is an example done at the University of Pretoria in our faculty, talking of using smart avos basically. And this is a work done by my colleague at the university, Professor Stein, and his PhD student. So what it entails basically how we use technology to improve life cycle costing to improve value, supply chain management, and end of the day, improve the quality of product and help the economy. So as you can see, this is called the Smart Evo, and we talk about basically from seed to consumption. So it looks like an Evo. You can make it the color of an Evo by 3D printing it, but it doesn't taste like an Evo, and certainly you cannot eat it. But certainly it's integrated into the avocado industry. And you know, South Africa is a big exporter of avocado. So how we can improve the life cycle of the product and improve the costing of the product is very important for the economy as a whole. So what are some of the objectives? As you can see, we want to quantify the potential damage for this. We want to optimize the stuff and develop metrics and statistics to characterize this. So it goes beyond just the agricultural scientist or the agriculturalists developing the crop and reaping the crop, but also how the packaging is done, how the transportation is done, about the road environment, the transport environment, about the air conditioning or the cooling environment is transported in, and eventually where it goes out to supply. We need to have the whole ecosystem captured so that we can analyze it and provide good data and information about it. So this Evo has lots of fancy electronics, as you can see. Besides being 3D printed and using 3D printing, it has electronics, for example, a battery. It'll have things like to do vibration testing, to do a sensor technology like temperature testing, and so forth, so that you get good information about the product throughout this life cycle. So as you can see, it's a transdisciplinary work, and that's why I'm talking about the future of work, how it has changed from traditionally a transportation engineer or a civil engineer worried about the roads, or you find an agricultural scientist worried about growing the crops, or you look at the ports authority worried about transporting this, or the airline industry transporting this in time to its destination. So it's about end-to-end value chain. And of course, different aspects are required. As you know, South Africa is a big exporter of Evo, as an example, to European countries, particularly Netherlands. So it's important we understand the quality of the service and how we can add value, like I mentioned, to the product. So it's about packaging. I mentioned process packaging from the product itself, transportation, transcontinental freight, and then last mile target transportation. So this is the whole ecosystem I speak about. That includes industrial engineers, agricultural scientists, civil engineers, data scientists, economists, and of course social scientists to make people understand, for example, the low-skilled worker, the person that's basically harvesting the crop in the farms, to understand how this fits together in that particular environment. So this is just one example, and there are many examples in all fraternities we can find that impacts the future world of work. So these are, as we know, in South Africa, we have the big five, and we like the big five. So these are the 5 key realities I like to leave behind as take home. So if you don't remember anything else, but at least you remember these 5 things, I think it's something to benefit going forward. And the first one is, we call the 3 T's: technology, talent, and transformation. So 57% of jobs are vulnerable to digital transformation like automation. This is statistics found globally. I think in a country like South Africa, it could be even more at times. So basically, we talk about the rise of exponential organization, where IoT, big data, algorithms, software, crowd on demand, so forth, and will become the new norm. And I spoke about the gig economy going forward. So basically, we find in the gig economy, it has been found, of course, we don't have data for South Africa, but certainly data for the USA has found that 43% of the workforce will be via the gig economy in the next 2 to 3 years in the USA. And that shows that how people will be able to kind of, based on the flexible temporary space and freelance jobs, often via online platforms, will be able to hire and secure people. So hence, using online platforms, using technology will become a very, very important part in the gig economy. Of course, if we believe in the free market system, and the free market system is an important part of the whole ecosystem. And then, of course, lifelong reinvention and innovation going forward. So it has been found, basically, the average half-life of learned business competency was 30 years in 1984, and that's changed to 5 years into 2014, and of course it's dropping. It doesn't mean it's going to be 0, but it'll be kind of showing, and what it's showing basically is that the half-life of business competency is getting smaller and smaller. Hence, the idea of lifelong learning is becoming more and more important. And of course, nimble enterprises. I spoke about the gig economy. We need to think big, but act locally or act small. So how we impact local innovation and how we impact locally. So the gig economy, like I said, is becoming more and more important, especially where people and companies and executives and business leaders are not keen to hire more workforce, but however to use what they have more efficiently and outsource some of the work that they do, basically. Ethics of work and society. Ethics of work and society is becoming very, very important. Having robots to do certain things, using AI, these are all human created, and they can be used constructively or they can be used destructively. So it's very important upon us, each and every one of us as professionals, to understand with the ethics of work and society and how we implement this, because we could create things that could be innovative but destructive. And certainly we need to protect our planet and protect our environment, and hence ethics is becoming more and more important going forward. So coming to my concluding parts, what we need to do as the SAIE. Of course, if you look at our bouquet of courses we offer, there are certain things that I think we can improve on a lot. For example, SAI offerings to members and corporate with respect to the future of work. For example, Industry 4.0, where we can have courses on that, on the digital aspects, the non-digital aspects, data and big data, and holistic view on the implications thereof, organizational integration and approaches, which can help basically senior managers and leaders in the corporate space. Something on thought leadership on smart African cities, because many aspects of technology impact cities and how we make cities more efficient. And how do we lead that? And how do we think about those? And how do we strategize around them? Of course, cybersecurity, I mentioned earlier on. Digital forensics, cryptocurrency and blockchain. AI and machine learning in plant automation is becoming quite important for different reasons. For example, we can use AI and machine learning how to predict certain processes in the plant, but also very importantly for maintenance engineering and to predict failures or possible failures in an automated system so that we limit the downtime and of course at the same time help to improve the costing of the product going forward. Prevention and detection of procurement and contract fraud using machine learning. And those are important aspects, especially in the South African environment where we know fraud is becoming quite a serious issue. And of course, digital twinning, design and approaches to digital twinning. And I think those are becoming very, very important going forward because we can create processes and systems in a virtual environment before we invest significant amounts of money in terms of developing a prototype or developing a plant or developing a product. And these are new techniques that I think we need to equip ourselves and equip our workforce and equip our students going forward so that we become more and more efficient and embrace the future world of work. So having spoken about how we can help our professionals, help our over 6,000 members of the SAIEE, I think it's important for us to have offerings for our students as our student members and to increase their value in terms of their careers, and also at the next time and the next level, improve our next cohort of membership. So one of the things we could do maybe for our students out there is the Ready for Work program. Help them, for example, in career planning and how to get job satisfaction and how to make the best out of the job that they're going to be embarking upon. Of course, workplace navigation for future relevance, how they become, get the best out of their work environment and how they bosses can get the best out of them as well. Job preparedness and building your profile, building your brand as an engineer out there. And of course, the softer skills for the world of work. As I mentioned, things like cultural intelligence, emotional intelligence, working with different groups. These are important parts in the world of work, especially now that we can show, there's evidence to show diversity improves the workplace, improves innovation, and improves things being done better. And of course, the other thing we could look at maybe a hackathon, where we can bring different universities, even different countries together for students to work beyond the South African borders. And I think that's important, especially to improve diversity going forward. And of course, get students to understand the world of work beyond the South African borders. So finally, in conclusion, I'd like to say also there is an ongoing debate on how the working environment is changing rapidly. I think there is a clear consensus that there are changes and the changes are fundamental and the changes are evident. The younger generation are looking to strong mentors. And I think South African Institute of Electrical Engineers has a strong mentorship program and certainly can do much more. And with the expertise among its members, it can help in education and mentoring in the work environment to help these younger generation students and colleagues to grow and adapt to the changing work environment, even though they may be technologically proficient. Organizations need to strategize their employment policies to accommodate the changing world of work and keep in mind the expectations and needs of a diverse workforce. And I also mentioned earlier about how we get more and more women involved. And certainly women have different roles, besides being a mother, a professional out there, and of course helping to maintain a household. So these things need to be accommodated using technology and at the same time adding value to this particular work environment. Organizations and leaders should keep in mind the expectations and needs of these varied skills when making important decisions and need the expertise to prepare their organization for this change we see, of course, in a very different world of work, and how, like I mentioned, we bring these different skill sets together to help to make things more innovative and obviously to help to create products and processes that customers would want and need. So I think very importantly, I think the future is now, the future is happening. We need to embrace the future. And of course, the future of work is us as members of the SAIEE, us as professionals. We are an important ingredient, we're important leaders and thought leaders, and we can architect the future world of work. Thank you very much.